Hey everyone, and welcome. Today, we're diving into one of the biggest questions you can possibly ask. What does it actually mean to be alive? We're going to take a grand tour, uncover the secret checklist that separates life from non-life, and find the one single building block that connects every living thing on this planet.
So let's start with a simple question. What's the real difference between, say, a rock and a rabbit? I mean, yeah, one's furry and hops, and the other just sits there. But the real answer goes way deeper, and it gets to the very heart of biology. Turns out there's a secret set of rules, an exclusive checklist you have to meet to join the club of life. All right, let's look at those rules. Biologists have nailed down a set of core characteristics that, when you put them all together, really define what it means to be alive. Think of these as the non-negotiable, must-have features to get into that club. And here's that checklist. Some of these are pretty obvious, right? Movement, growth, makes sense. But a few are kind of surprising. Take irritability. Now, that doesn't mean getting angry at traffic. It's really about sensitivity, the ability to sense what's going on around you and react, like a plant leaning toward a sunny window. And here's the kicker. To be considered alive, you have to do all of these things. Okay, so once something checks all those boxes and we say, yep, it's alive, we hit another problem. Life is just unbelievably diverse. I mean, you've got everything from mushrooms to marlins. How in the world do you even begin to organize all of that? Well, scientists realized they needed a system, kind of like a giant library for all living things. And the solution they came up with is this brilliant system called classification. The guy we really have to thank for this is Carolus Linnaeus, a botanist back in the 18th century. He came up with this amazing method for grouping organisms based on what they have in common, and it brought some serious order to the beautiful chaos of the natural world. And this is his system. It's a hierarchy, and you can think of it like a biological address for any living thing. You start way out at the biggest, most general category, the kingdom, and you get more and more specific as you go down the list, all the way to a single, unique species. It's just a really elegant way to file away all of life. So how on earth do you remember all 7 of those levels? Well, biologists have a little trick up their sleeve, a mnemonic. It goes, King Philip came over for grape soda. It's kind of silly, but it works. Kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. A simple sentence that helps you remember the entire framework of life. All right, so we've got the filing system. Now let's peek into the top drawers of that cabinet, the kingdoms. We're about to go on a super quick tour of the 5 major groups that scientists use to sort basically everything that's alive. This is the 5-kingdom system, which we can thank R.H. Whittaker for. It sorts everything into these big, broad buckets. You've got bacteria over in Monera and all sorts of other interesting things in Protista. But for now, we're going to focus on the big 3 that we interact with every single day: fungi, plants, and animals. So how do you tell these 3 apart? Well, it comes down to a few huge differences. Plants are what we call autotrophic, fancy word for they make their own food. Animals and fungi, we're heterotrophic. We have to eat other things. But maybe the biggest giveaway is the cell wall. Plants have one made of cellulose. Fungi have one made of chitin. And animals, well, we don't have a cell wall at all. These are really fundamental design choices. Okay, so we've seen all this incredible diversity, and we've sorted it into these massive kingdoms. But that just makes you wonder, what could a mushroom, a blue whale, and a giant sequoia tree possibly have in common? I mean, really, what is the one secret, the one fundamental thing that unites all of them? Just think about that for a second. All of that variety we just talked about, all those different ways of eating and moving and living, there has to be some common thread, some shared fundamental building block at the heart of it all. So what is it? And the answer is the cell. This is the big aha moment in all of biology. Every single living organism we've mentioned, and every one we haven't, is made of one or more of these tiny microscopic units. The cell is like the atom of life. It is the basic unit of structure and function for absolutely everything. Now, figuring this all out wasn't just one discovery. It was more like a scientific relay race. It kicked off with Robert Hooke seeing what he called cells in a piece of cork. Then Schleiden and Schwann passed the baton, realizing that all plants and animals were made of them. And finally, Virchow brought it home with the last crucial piece of the puzzle: all cells have to come from other cells. And that, altogether, is what we call the cell theory.
So we figured out that the cell is the foundation of all life. So let's zoom in. What's actually going on inside one of these things? You should think of it less like an empty box and more like a tiny, bustling city with all sorts of different parts doing incredibly important jobs.
When you put a plant cell and an animal cell next to each other, you can really see their different life strategies. The plant cell has that rigid outer wall for support and little solar panels called chloroplasts to make its own food. The animal cell, on the other hand, is flexible because it doesn't have that wall, which allows for movement. These aren't just minor tweaks. These differences define what it is to be a plant versus an animal. So inside that cell city, in both plants and animals, you have these specialized departments called organelles. The nucleus is like City Hall, it holds the DNA blueprint. The mitochondrion is the power plant, cranking out energy. And ribosomes? They're the factories, building all the proteins the cell needs to function. It's a whole world at work in there.
So all these different cells have the same basic departments, right? A nucleus, mitochondria, the whole deal. But how does that one simple blueprint lead to so much variety? Well, just look at animals with a backbone. That single, basic animal cell plan has been tweaked and adapted to create 5 totally distinct classes of life: fish, amphibians, reptiles, birds, and mammals. It's just incredible proof of nature's creativity. So, after this whole journey, from the rules of life, through the kingdoms, all the way down to the cell itself, the conclusion seems pretty clear, doesn't it? To be alive is to be made of cells. That seems to be the one rule that ties it all together. But what if I told you there's something out there that just completely blurs that line? Something that challenges this nice, neat definition we've just spent all this time building? Say hello to the virus. It is a true biological puzzle. I mean, on one hand, it does some things living things do. It can reproduce, though only by hijacking a living cell, and it can definitely adapt to its environment. But on the other hand, it fails most of our tests. It can't eat, it can't breathe, it can't grow on its own. If it's not inside a host, it basically becomes an inert little crystal. It lives right on that razor's edge between life and non-life.
And that leaves us with one last really fascinating question to chew on. If the fundamental unit of all life is the cell, but viruses can copy themselves and evolve without being a true cell, then what in the world are they? Are they just complicated little machines, or are they some other kind of life we don't fully understand yet? The truth is, scientists are still debating it, which just goes to show you, in biology, there is always another mystery to solve.